Welcome to Beyond Speaking with Brian Lord, a podcast featuring deeper conversations with the world's top speakers.
Hi, I'm Brian Lord, your host for the Beyond Speaking podcast. Our guest today is the inestimable Joel Zeff. He's a national workplace expert, speaker, author, humorist. Joel captivates audiences with his unique blend of hilarious improv comedy, which I agree with. It actually is hilarious. It's not just part of his intro. Along with essential ideas on work and life. His book, Make the Right Choice, Creating a Positive, Innovative, and Productive Workplace Life, is consistently listed as one of the top work-life balance books on Amazon. He's appeared on CNBC, the Fox Network, and many other media outlets. Sometimes he has a big bushy beard, and sometimes, like now, he doesn't. So, ladies and gentlemen, Joel Zeff. Joel, welcome.
Thank you. That was an excellent introduction. And I feel like we were just joking, but I feel like somebody from Shark Tank has canceled, and that's why you're interviewing me. Or there's a general or someone that climbed Mount Everest or invented something incredible, and then they've canceled, and that's why I've gotten this spot. That's kind of how I'm feeling. Right?
That's all very true. Totally true. Like we were like, everybody, no one else literally can do this right now. I had a free half hour. Everybody from Shark Tank that's ever been on Shark Tank has canceled on you, or you've already interviewed them. You're like, we're down to Joel now. This is what we get to. But it's like, hey, life is improvisation. We go on. Joel just happened to call up on a video call right now.
I'm excited.
We're making up questions as we go along. I mean, I do have my Shark Tank questions I could ask you about, how you started.
I'd love to answer them.
And how you were in rap videos in the 90s. I think that's a classic way to go.
I'd love to answer them.
So from that, so your background actually is improvisation. How do the secrets of how did you get into improv? I'm going to start with that one.
That's a good one. Well, my degree is in journalism. I was a newspaper reporter, and I'm very proud of that. Nice. And that's how I got to Dallas. I was working, we had two major newspapers in Dallas, and I joined the one that was going to close 6 months after I joined. So the Titanic was leaving the dock, whoop, whoop, and I was like, wait, one more, let me jump on board. And so I jumped on board. 6 months later, the paper closes. Not my fault. And I don't think there's anybody would say it was not my fault, just because, it's just coincidence that 6 months later it closed. But so when I got to Dallas, literally the first weekend I was in Dallas, a friend of mine took me to an improv comedy show. And I was an audience volunteer, and I asked for audience volunteers now in my event. So I was an audience volunteer, so I relate. And literally it was like a Disney movie. It was, the light, there was chorus and birds singing and everything. And I was like, oh my, I'm sure people feel this way often, but it was like a calling. It was like, this is it. I don't know how I'm going to make it happen, but this has to happen. And so I started taking some workshops and I started, and then when the paper closed, obviously I had a lot of free time, and I used that free time wisely. I had free time and a severance check, two really important things that happened in my life. And so I started really, I started doing open mics, stand-up open mics. I continued taking workshops in improvisation. I auditioned, got invited to be part of the cast. They had their own theater at that time in Dallas, and that's how it was born. And then my other side, my responsible personality side, said, well, I actually have to work and have money and pay rent and buy food. And so I started working at a PR firm and then an advertising firm. And one of my clients was Texas Instruments, and they were having an executive retreat. It was all VP level. It was a technology, small group. And they said, hey, we know you do improv on the weekends. Can you come up and, do some of those improv games with us? And, I was like, sure, yes. I mean, the answer in improv is always yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
That's
and,
one of the first things they teach you in improv is you always say yes. Yes. And then you figure it out from there after you say yes. And I took another performer with me and we had a blast. More importantly, this group had an amazing time. And we didn't know what we were doing. We were just playing this game. There was no message. There's like, well, let's do this. Okay. And, the little light bulb started flickering on. I said, well, maybe I could offer this to some of my other clients. And at that time, I was just thinking, well, it'd be about creativity. It'd be about innovation because, that's what improv is about. But the more I really, the more I did, the more I analyzed, the more I thought about it. Improv teaches so much about teamwork, so much about change, so much about communication and leadership. And so it started evolving. And, one event led to the next event. And I would do something, and I always spoke from the heart, or I would do something and it might not work, or I would evolve it or change it and incorporate some new things or new ways of doing it, or where I place myself and the audience volunteers. And then we created something and it just kept evolving, and it continues to evolve today.
So how does that work virtually? So I know you're doing a lot of, you're like, having a good year. We were talking before we got on camera here. And so how does that work virtually?
Well, virtually, I think it works a couple different ways. I don't do the audience volunteer games like I do in a live event virtually. It's just because of the platforms and the way things work. I've done a few things like in a breakout room. We've done some word games, but I really incorporate the energy of improv in my virtual events. And if we're on a Zoom call and I see everybody, we can I interact. We can do some interaction stuff. I talk about the spirit of Ta-Da, and we get everybody to do a Ta-Da, and we talk about some of the little things that we can do. Like we do a bunny thing that talks about, not being able to take a risk and not being afraid to make a mistake. And so we can do little things. It's different, but we really focus on the energy, the messages, the fun. It's really me doing the improv, me being fun, me creating that energy and bringing it to their virtual event. And the really powerful messages that improv taught me.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of those messages? So I know you've got, especially for in books, that's one of the things I think is great, is that improv is something that's very spontaneous. A book is something that's very much not. You talk about making the right choice, creating positive, innovative, productive work life. Right now, that is a tough thing to do for a lot of people. If they're working from home, and they're working from work sometimes, or in these completely different ways. So improvisation is people probably haven't thought about it, is a really important thing to be able to do right now. What advice would you give to people who are trying to balance work and life right now from sort of an improv perspective?
Well, we're all improvising all the time, whether we know it or not. And there's certain rules that allow us to be more successful within an improv game in a theater. If we take some of those rules as we're improving each and every day, I think that's going to help us be successful. And some of the things that I talk about change. And obviously, we are dealing with a tremendous amount of change and disruption. Improv is all about change and disruption, and embracing that and learning to lead through that disruption, finding that creativity, finding that innovation, finding that success through that change. And improv teaches us a few very simple choices. One, being prepared for change. When I ask an audience volunteer to come up on stage, I see them walking up on stage, and I'm kind of reading them. I'm reading their body language, their eyes, their voice, and inevitably, they've all made a really important choice. They're prepared. They have no idea what I'm going to ask them to do or what the responsibility is going to be, but they are prepared for change. Changes their whole attitude, right? Changes their whole tone and allows them to be successful. That's the first choice. The second choice about change is being present and in the moment. Especially so many of us are working virtually. And we have to be more present. Sometimes it's very difficult to be present, through virtual, whether it's Zoom or Teams or WebEx or whatever you're using. But we've really got to be more present and be in the moment. That's when we create that partnership. That's when we create that ability to be successful. And the other really important choice about change I want to talk about is openness and flexibility. To be more open and flexibility. We are all dealing with so much disruption and change. We have to be more open and flexible to how we work, to each other's ideas, to something new. And I think when we do that, when we embrace that, companies are going to find success. And we look at the companies that are succeeding right now, they're the ones that are changing quickly. They're the ones that are adapting quickly. Think about, I'm sure you and whoever's watching, we all do a lot of takeout now. We kind of tend to go to restaurants that have really adapted the technology that make it easy, right? Which restaurants make it easy? The technology, the online ordering, the pickup, whoever has done it and embraced it, that's who we spend our money with, right? And because they're embracing that change, realizing they're going to have to adapt. And that's what improv is all about, is just adapting, is embracing that change and disruption and finding success within it.
Which do you think of those three is the hardest for either individuals or companies to do?
I think, I don't know if it's a company. Let's talk about the individual, because it's really the individual making the choices, and then the company can make the overall choice, but the individuals have to buy in. The individuals have to say, okay, I'm willing to adapt. I'm willing to change. And when this is over, when we're back to some form of normal, there's going to be some other gigantic shift, some other huge disruption, some other change, small change, big change every day. It's what we do and what our choices are and how we adapt to that change. It's what our choices are when we're faced, how we react to that change. We can't control change. Whether the company, the individual, we can't control change. We only control how we react to change. And so, and that's again what improv teaches us, is how we react, what our attitude, what our energy, what our choices are. And I think when we create a level of support, when we appreciate people, when we give each other that positive support, it's easier for individuals to make that choice. And that's what companies really have to focus on. Leaders have to focus on giving their teams that appreciation, that positive support, that energy, that fuel that gives them that fuel, right, to make those choices. So it's easier to react to change by being open and flexible and being present in the moment and being prepared for change. And another choice is being a great teammate, being a great leader.
That's one of those things that I think that gets into it. So like I was inspired after seeing one of your corporate presentations. I booked you for an event in Nashville and checked it out. And I went and took an improv class. And
you did?
I did. And so, and it was okay. It was like one of those free ones, and it was like I had to mix like a giant
Did you have
bowl.
a Groupon? You had a Groupon?
No, well, it was something like that. This was a precursor to Groupon. That's how old I am. I'm sneaky. This was like Groupon and Facebook weren't things at the time, but like the whole thing of taking risks. Like I'm kind of crazy like that. I kind of like doing weird stuff, but other people are a little risk averse. Like they would say, the whole thing, like you were saying, the first rule of improv is yes and, or yes, or whatever it is. And for most people, it's no, or a lot of people it is. How do you get over that fear?
I think you have to not being afraid to make a mistake. That's what really improv teaches us. You're going to make mistakes. We've both made mistakes already on this podcast, Brian. Do you want me to list them out? We make mistakes. We want to learn from a mistake. We want to minimize them. But the secret there, people always ask, after an improv show, how do you do it? There's no script, there's no rehearsal, there's no plan. How do you do it? Well, I always said it really focuses on two things. One, I'm not afraid to make a mistake. And two, I'm confident in my abilities and my skills that if I do make a mistake, that I can find a way to find success and build on that, right? And it's that confidence and that not being afraid to make a mistake. People, and I think a lot of, we talk about these virtual events. I think a lot of people are afraid of these virtual events. They're not used to talking to a camera and not having any response back. They're not, they don't feel confident. They're afraid that they're going to say something wrong. They're going to misspeak. They're going to mispronounce a word. And they are, right? If you're afraid of that, it freezes us. It freezes. We can't move forward. We can't grow. And it's hard, but you take just a little step at a time. You don't have to just create this huge thing today. Just take a little step at a time. Do something small that gets you out of your comfort zone today. If you do a little something today and then tomorrow and then the next day, and you'll be surprised how you build your skills. You'll be surprised how you create that confidence. And when you create that confidence, you're not afraid to make a mistake, anything can happen.
So what's the Tao of Ta-Da? You mentioned Ta-Da earlier. Tell us about that.
So the Ta-Da is about, you think about your kids. Mine are older now, but you think about your kids. Everything was a celebration, right? When kids are like 3 and 4, everything in their life is a Ta-Da. They eat a cheese sandwich, Ta-Da, right? They do a little drawing. I mean, we celebrate everything, right? I mean, literally everything they do is the most amazing thing they've ever done. And we're celebrating it. We're excited about it. They sit down, they stand up. Wow.
I've got 3-year-olds. They're going through potty training right now. So we're doing a lot of weird cheering.
A lot of celebrating.
Yeah.
And, as we get older, and you see that energy when you celebrate with them, right? When you cheer a 3-year-old, they get, that big smile in their eyes, and they want to do whatever you celebrated, they want to do it again. And as we get older, we celebrate less, right? We do birthdays and anniversaries, and somebody wins an annual award. But what about all that time in between? We don't celebrate those successes each and every day. We need that Ta-Da energy every day, right? That fuel, especially working at home when we only get to talk to our pet and our spouse and maybe the UPS man. I mean, you got to celebrate everybody. And that Ta-Da is an energy and it's a spirit, and we need that fuel. We need that energy. And so I think that we need to give ourselves that Ta-Da and that applause every day. I always say when I was doing live events, remember that? That was fun. Remember the chicken? Chicken.
Chicken and rice pilaf.
Oh, Brian, I would kill for a rice pilaf. Maybe a vegetable medley. And then you would sit at the table. There'd be like cheesecake and then like a brownie.
And you try and switch them before the other people sat down?
Well, you'd like, we're doing, what dessert? I want to be here. There's a German chocolate. You got cheesecake. I'm going to sit in the German chocolate. I would kill for that. I don't even remember what I was talking about. But when I was doing live events, that applause, I'm very lucky that speakers are very lucky. We have a job where we get a round of applause. That's pretty awesome, right? When you have a job, that part of your job is you get a round of applause. That's pretty awesome. And most people don't have a job where they get a round of applause. And now I have a job where I don't get a round of applause because it's virtual. You don't see anybody on these virtual events.
You should do like the NFL does and pipe in noise, or the NBA. You could just hit like a little button, and then there's like turn that thing behind you into a screen, and you have applause, and people are like, oh yeah.
Brian, I'm going to look into that. I don't know what the technology, but
you can have an applause button like sitting over behind you, like on that stack of books right there, and then just like everybody feels it.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into that. That's a pretty great idea. Just improv that. But everybody needs a round of applause. Just because I have a job where I get a round of applause, everybody deserves that round of applause. And as we're working, most of us are working virtually. Some people are going to the office and, there's, 20% there. There's not a lot of interaction, a lot of people, but you need that energy and that round of applause. And it just feels good when you just kind of, you just start the day, and whether you're doing it to your pet or the UPS guy or the DoorDash guy, you're like, wow, holy cow. It makes them feel good. It makes you feel good, because it's that energy and that fuel that helps us make these choices that we've been talking about. And so many of those choices depend on that positive support, that positive energy, that fuel. And that's really what that spirit of Ta-Da is all about.
So Joel, tell me about your harmonica moment.
I never played the harmonica or talk about the harmonica in my live events, but on these virtual events, all of a sudden I started talking about the harmonica. And I did tell you about when I lost my job at the Dallas Times-Herald, when they called me on a Sunday and they said, the paper is closing, come clean out your desk. Wow. Yeah. And so I just moved to Dallas 6 months. I have no furniture, right? I've got nothing. I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment. I'm single, I've got credit card debt. I've got nothing. And so they called me up and say, come clean out your desk. And my harmonica was sitting there, and I grabbed this harmonica. So this is 1990, right? No, 1991. This is 1991. So I grabbed this harmonica, which I had purchased at college. I went to some lecture or some event, and I guess it was a harmonica played. I don't remember. I guess somebody played the harmonica. I don't know, but they were selling harmonicas, and I bought one. And I have no musical ability whatsoever, Brian. I have none. I'm completely tone deaf. I have nothing. But a harmonica is an instrument where you can have no musical ability, play the harmonica, and someone goes, oh, you play the harmonica. They feel like you can fake the harmonica. You can fake it. You can fake the harmonica. And I got really good at one blues note. Hang on, let me see that. Just that. Bum, 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 bum. So when they called and said, come clean out your desk, and it really, a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I always say that's one of the best days of my life. The day I got married, the birth of my 2 kids, and the day they called to tell me that come clean out your desk, you don't have a job, which is weird to say the day you lost your job was one of your best days, but it really is, because I made a choice. And I grabbed this harmonica and I went down to the newspaper, and on the back loading dock, all the media had assembled, and the TV stations, the radio stations, the other newspapers. And I kind of look at it, and I didn't plan any of this. There was no thought to any of this. I'm 22 or 23, however, I'm 23. I'm 23. There's nothing that went in here and out there. There's nothing. And so I grab my harmonica and I take a look at all the assembled media, and I went, I got no job. I got no money. I got nothing right now. Just talking to you. And 30 years ago, I'm going to be Beyond Speaking podcast with Brian Lord. And you can see, you can hear the cameras go, right? It was crazy. And so I was doing that, and a couple things happened. One is, this is 1991. This is before social media. This is before things went viral. I went viral in 1991. I was getting calls from all over the country from my friends that saw me on whatever news station. The story was picked up. Both 2 stations in Dallas let off their newscasts with me playing the harmonica. Keep in mind, I'm 23. I just started 6 months ago, right? I'm nobody. People are sad, people are upset. And I think it became a story because they weren't expecting someone to be happy when they lost their job. They weren't expecting someone to, I lost my job. I got no money. They weren't expecting that, right? And so, and there was in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, the city next to Dallas, huge picture of me playing the harmonica. And it was really, I think it went whatever viral it was at that time, was because I made this choice that you weren't going to choose how I was going to feel. I'm going to choose. And we talk about this, it was my harmonica. I talk about it as my harmonica moment of saying, I'm going to choose how I'm going to react to this disruption, what my next steps are. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to be energized. I'm going to have a great attitude about it. I'm going to, this is going to be about opportunity. And it was, because it was really, like I said, it's my harmonica moment. And, after that, I started doing improv and started doing stand-up, kind of really focus on what I love to do. And it just put me on a path that brought me here, Brian. I mean, that harmonica moment brought me to this moment speaking with you, because if I didn't have that harmonica moment, I don't know where's that path going to be. I'd still be a newspaper reporter. I don't know. And so many people are going through change and disruption right now, and they've got to look at their harmonica moment.
Thank you for joining us for the Beyond Speaking podcast. To learn more about today's guest, go to BeyondSpeak.com. Make sure to leave a review and subscribe wherever you listen.